Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like that. Yeah, here comes the.
All right, off to a rough start here. You too, man. I was on mute for a second. But what is going on, everybody, man? Good evening, Team Steezy family, and to all the 12s out there. Peace and blessings, peace and blessings. I don't remember the last time I went live. I don't remember the last time I've even posted on YouTube. So to everybody that I've kept waiting, thank you for being patient with me. Did you guys miss me? Because I missed you guys. I'm gonna just go straight to the chat here. I'm in a great mood. I know a lot of 12s have been, at least from what I'm seeing on social media, have been in disarray. A lot of 12s are panicking and saying that we're going in full rebuild mode. There are fans out there that are in panic mode. There are fans out there that haven't exactly been enamored with some of the moves that the Seahawks are making. And as the most optimistic guy, usually in the room, I'm pretty optimistic. I don't think this is a rebuild whatsoever. I think it's more of a retool. And I know that term has been used a lot, especially as it pertains to the Seahawks. In describing the Seahawks, we've definitely had a lot of periods of transition, to say the least. But look, nevertheless, change isn't always a bad thing. And I think change is necessary. For as bad of a PR move as it might have been to trade a franchise star like a DK Metcalf, to release a guy like a Tyler Lockett, to trade a Pro Bowl quarterback in a Geno Smith for the measly cost of a third round pick. I know PR wise, those aren't the most positive moves, but again, those moves have to be made. And so, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Like I mentioned, I've yet to really drop my thoughts about the release of Tyler Lockett, again, the trades of DK and Geno, the signings of a DeMarcus Lawrence, Sam Darnold, Josh Jones, Marquez, Valdez-Scantling. But before we do kick things off, I just want to say, you guys, I'm not doing this show alone. I didn't make an announcement beforehand because I kind of wanted to surprise you guys. I know you guys are used to seeing me go live by myself, and typically when I do bring on a guest, I like to let it be known beforehand. But because I've been away for so long, I wanted to surprise y'all. And so before I do bring him on board, I just want to say, if you guys aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that notification bell, just because with, the off season kind of in full swing now, I do plan on going live weekly. And I know I've been saying this forever, but I promise I'm going to go back to dropping long form content at the latest come this summertime. So right before the regular season, but I will be back to dropping long form content, not just live streams, not just YouTube shorts, not just collaborations with other YouTubers and content creators, but long form content. I know that's what a majority of you guys, and I've put polls out in the past, but that's what a majority of you guys have been asking for. And so I promise that we'll be back. So don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. But without further ado, y'all, he's an OG. I say this all the time. One of the voices of the Seattle Seahawks, a guy that I've been working with for years now. Heck, even before I started a YouTube channel. He's the reigning 12th man of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Norm Cam.
Thanks, man. That's a hell of an introduction, man. It's good to see you, brother. Hey, Steezy, real quick. I don't know if it's just me, but all of a sudden I was hearing you loud and clear. But then now that I'm on with you, it's like I'm having a hard time hearing your audio. So.
Oh, can you wait? So you can't. Hear me
okay, now you're good. Now you're good.
Okay.
That's good. It was like kind of muffled or something, but we're good now.
Okay, I gotta just speak real
weird.
close into the mic. But thank you for that. Thank you. Noah, first I gotta ask. I mean, how are you doing? How are you feeling with all these moves and with everything that's been going on?
It's definitely not been boring, right? I mean, today's the official start of the free agency period, yet we were making headlines and news yesterday or last week, day after day. Like we didn't even have a chance to react to the first bit of news before the next set of news came in. And then when we got to react to that, the next news came in. I was like one after another hit with, like you said earlier, three franchise players, faces of the team, all kind of disappeared within like a 3 or 4 day period. And it was a lot to take in for sure. And I was, I'm sure a lot of people seem to have the same reaction, especially when it came to Geno, that I think we all thought, well, Geno will come to an agreement with the Seahawks, some kind of fair, team-friendly deal. We'll have him for a couple years, and then we'll bring in the next guy. We'll draft a quarterback maybe, and well, I'm sure we'll work out something with DK. Lockett, yeah, he'll probably be gone. So that's what I thought. I thought we'd lose one Seahawk and keep the other two. I didn't expect all three to be gone. So I was kind of floored and a little bit in shock for the first couple days when all that went down.
And I know you went live just before this. If I wasn't busy prepping the show, damn well I would have been, tuned in. And so before we kind of get into like the meat and potatoes of the show, I just got to ask, what was your instant reaction to the DeMarcus Lawrence signing?
DeMarcus Lawrence. Well, there was the two, right? We had the Valdez-Scantling early in the day, and then the DeMarcus Lawrence. They're both kind of mixed reactions because when you hear their names, you think about them in their prime, right? They were both really good players at the peak of their careers, and so they're not quite at that point anymore. They're a few years past that peak period, but you're just kind of hoping, okay, if they can just get a little bit of that magic they had a few years ago, well, maybe that'll translate into something special for the Seahawks. And so, I dug a little deeper and looked at the stats because I haven't really paid that much attention to what these guys have done lately. But the numbers wise, it's like, Lawrence, he only played 4 games before he had that foot injury, but he had 3 sacks. That's pretty good. I mean, he had in a full season where he played 17 games, he had 4 sacks the year before. So the fact that he had 4 sacks last year or 3 sacks last year in just 4 games, that's saying something, right? So I'm just hoping that maybe he can carry that over. Maybe the fact that he was out last year with that injury, instead of looking at it as like, he's injury prone, maybe it's we saved him 14 games of wear and tear, and he's got a little bit more left because he didn't wear himself out last year because he didn't have to play the whole season. So, there's 2 ways you can kind of look at it. But in general, I like it. I feel really good about the defense in general for the Seahawks. I feel like Mike Macdonald never wasted any time continuing to tweak and fine-tune that thing. I feel like, the fact that Mike Macdonald's a defensive coach, as we all know, I feel like, because obviously he'll focus on what his strength is, which is the defense. I feel like he's got this car in the shop. He's got a 2-car garage, and Mike Macdonald's has got his car over here on the defensive side, and then he's got his coordinator with the offensive side, and he's like polishing it, buffing it out, and like, okay, I think we can put some nice rims on this one. Yeah, let's put a little special muffler on this one. Meanwhile, the other guy's like still building his car. And hey, how's it going over there? I kind of need some engines and transmission. Okay, yeah, we'll get you some of that, but let me just keep buffing out my beautiful defensive machine over here. That's kind of what it feels like right now. Like there's a great defensive machine that's been on the move, tweaking, getting the right pieces. Meanwhile, the offense is like desperately needing some of that core material, i.e. offensive linemen, to make it a lot easier of a transition for our new coordinator and our new quarterback and new receivers and all these new pieces that we're going to be seeing next year.
Right, and one quick nugget about DeMarcus Lawrence, I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking this. Well, actually, 2 quick nuggets. He has that connection to Adam Dirty, because remember, Adam Dirty, our defensive coordinator, or the Seahawks defensive coordinator, was a part of that, defensive coaches staff. Now DeMarcus Lawrence, as it pertains to his sack numbers, I think he has a career high of like 14 and a half or like 17 and a half. Those years were not under Adam Dirty, but from like 2021 to 2023, I thought that was when I thought that was when he was at the peak of his powers as a run defender, and that was under an Aden Dirty. And so we'll touch on this as well. MVS, he had a nice stretch last year with the Saints. Who was offensive coordinator there? Clint Kubiak. And so there's a lot of familiarity with both of these signings. I don't think people are really paying attention to the parallels. One more thing, though, like I mentioned, there was another nugget that I wanted to talk about with the DeMarcus Lawrence. I saw this on X earlier today, but his agent did say that if the Cowboys were in playoff contention towards the end of the year last year, Lawrence would have been healthy enough to play. But because they were out of playoff contention, it didn't make any sense for him to kind of put his body on the line in a contract year. And so take that for whatever it's worth. And maybe you want to take it with a grain of salt, but I think that it's a good thing that he's 100% healthy, at least according to his agent, going into the offseason, and hopefully come training camp, there won't be any sort of complications or anything like that. But for those of you guys that are worried about DeMarcus Lawrence's health, if we're going to take his agent's words at face value, there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, I still think that little break, whether voluntarily because the team wasn't going anywhere or whether he still was hurt and just couldn't play, the fact that he only played 4 games, that's 13 games on the body he didn't have to bang himself around for. So, he's 13 games healthier than he would have been if he played a whole season. So we are getting a little more rested version of him than it would have been had he been playing all those games like we'd seen the years past. So hopefully that'll help him get off to a fresh start this year.
Yes, sir. Well said. Now, I know we've kind of already gotten into the thick of the show, but real quick, I do just want to, bring up some of the guys here in the chat just because I know a lot of them have been patiently waiting. We got my guy, Sajin. About time, brother. I was about to do an APB on you. What up? We have Robert Stevens in the building. What up, Steezy and company? And we have your final chief saying trash is real in Seattle. My God. Not Chief in the building saying, what's up, Steezy? What's going on, Not Chief? We got Deshaun Baker in the house. New era officially in Seattle. Forgive me if I'm saying this wrong. Is it Modify?
It looks like Modify.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you for saying hey. Hello, long time no see. We have Baby Rhea in the building saying, what's up, Calvin? Long time no see. What's up? We got our guy Larry in the building. Yes, sir. Sajin is saying, what's up, Norb? Robert Stevens.
He's been busy on my channel too, so gets around.
Heck yeah, all these guys showing love. I will get back to you guys here in the chat, but we do got to get into the meat and potatoes part of the show. And I know this is kind of old news, but Norb, I haven't really heard your thoughts, and I know the people haven't heard my thoughts. So I want to start off with Tyler Lockett. We don't have to answer this question. I'm going to put it up on the board, but I want to start with Tyler Lockett. You're not surprised, right, that the Seahawks released him? I mean, the cap number was over $30 million.
Yeah.
What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, no, I had been saying all along, I figured this, at least under this contract, there was no way Lockett was going to play another year. They were not going to pay him that much for what his productivity had become. There's a lot of speculation that, well, now that contract's kind of been ripped up and he's sort of off the team, that doesn't mean he couldn't come back and sign a whole new deal and just play for another year. I guess it's fun to entertain that possibility. If he wanted to do that and they could work out a deal that was, obviously a lot cheaper than what was going to be on the books for that, I'd be okay with that. I mean, I don't think the guy's can't catch the ball anymore. I mean, he could still run, he still catch. I think it's just the way that the offense played out last year with JSN becoming the new, slot guy and getting all those short intermediate plays, and then DK getting the stretch. He was kind of the odd man out, not because he wasn't any good anymore. I think it's just kind of, JSN kind of took that role over. But I still think he can play. I guess if he's going to play again, I would rather him, selfishly as a Seahawks fan, I would rather just see him, if not come back and play with the Seahawks, just retire, than have to see him go to another team. It's just hard, right? It's hard to watch Bobby Wagner go to the Commanders. I'm happy for him, happy to see him succeed for him as a person because he's a great guy. But it's hard as a Seahawks fan to watch your players go and succeed with other teams because you're like, you should be doing that with our team, So I guess personally, I'd rather just see Lockett if he doesn't come back and play like one more year, just to, hang it up and just call it good. And we'll just love him for the fact that he gave us 10 great years as the Seattle Seahawks, and one of the most underrated receivers of all time for the Seattle.
Right, and Mina Kimes talked about this on Twitter, or on X, shortly after his release. But Seattle's fortunate to have had two of the most underrated receivers of all time in the last decade plus or so, in Doug Baldwin and then a Tyler Lockett. And so there's something about Seattle, finding these guys, these gems per se, right, in the draft or even outside of the draft, because Doug Baldwin was undrafted, for crying out loud, right? But Seattle seems to have a penchant for taking receivers and turning him to the most underrated receiver in the game. And so, Norb, I'm with you. I'd hate to see him, on the Chiefs, for example, but at the same time, I know he wants to win, and he does have that Kansas State connection. And so I don't know how real this is, but I did see a rumor on X earlier today that Tyler Lockett is, quote unquote, intrigued by the possibility of potentially joining the Chiefs. And I think that in the next couple of days, there could be a visit there. If it's not the Chiefs, and if he doesn't retire, and if it's not back with the Seahawks, do you have a team in mind? Maybe like the Texans, Commanders?
Oh, man, that's a good question. It's got to be obviously a team that it's got a role for him, because, a lot of these teams, they've kind of got their receiving core sort of it's set. It's hard to see where he would fit in to do that. Obviously, a team that likes to, throw the football but needs a possession type receiver. I hadn't even thought about that. I think part of me doesn't even want to entertain the idea of seeing him in a Green Bay Packers uniform, or I think he's got to go somewhere else. At least go to an AFC team, And I would love to see him go to a contender. You mentioned the Chiefs, and that's one team that I could see him going, okay, he's going to be playoff bound if he does, and he never got a Super Bowl ring. If he's got a chance to win a Super Bowl in his final year, if it won't be with us, if he'd go to a team that he could have a chance to do that, I would hope for all the success in the world for him, because there's some players that you think have been great for Seattle, played their whole career with Seattle. I think guys like Walter Jones, that's a dude who should have had a ring. They should have won Super Bowl 40. He should have a ring to show for it, because he's one of the greatest of all time, probably always will be. And doesn't have a ring to show for it. Tyler Lockett, too, is one of those guys that, just never really, not the kind of guy who's going to make national commercials and national headlines. He's just going to be special in Seattle. But, he just never made a lot of noise, was never a problem, never complained, never got that negative attention. He just got his job done and was just, you can always count on to make some spectacular catch. He'll always be known for that bent, like a bow and arrow type of catch against the Rams in the big green unis at home in that left corner, where he's just, you freeze it, and it's like, there's no way he caught that ball. And you look at the picture and it's a thing of beauty. I mean, that'll probably be the picture that represents who he is as a player and what he brought to the table. But yeah, as far as a team, again, AFC Chiefs makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, there's a few teams that he could go to. I was thought, I could see Pete Carroll giving him a call and say, hey man, you want to join Gino and have a few more tosses your way? I mean, you can never rule out the possibility, but I guess it's really up to what Tyler Lockett wants to do, if he's ready to move on, or if he really wants to play, even if it's outside of Seattle. But that would be the only thing. AFC and a contender. Otherwise, just retire. It's hard to watch if it's not. Definitely not a division. I don't want to see him wearing a Cardinals uniform, no 49ers uniform, no Rams uniform anywhere, but definitely not the NFC West. Anywhere else, at least.
Right. Okay, and so before we move on to the next player that I want to talk about, for those of you guys in the chat, drop your answers down below. If you don't see a reunion in Seattle come into fruition, where would you guys like to see them? Vegas, Kansas City, Commanders, a reunion with Bobby Wagner, the Texans, who aren't likely to bring back a Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell's obviously out, for next year with those horrific injuries that he had suffered. I think those are all feasible destinations, but yeah, chat, feel free to drop your guys' predictions as to where Tyler Lockett will land. Nor, speaking of negative attention, I hate to even bring that up, right? Because I love the man. I love the guy. But DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers for pick number 52 in this year's NFL draft. Just before you go, I just got to say, as much as I love DK, and I know some people are going to look at me and say, oh, you're more willing to say this because he's out of Seattle. You never said this when he was in Seattle. But to be quite frank, I've always felt this way. DK has always been just slightly overrated in my eyes, and now he's being paid like a top 8 receiver in the game. I've always had issues with his tendency to body catch the ball. When it came to high point in the football, I just feel like he didn't always play up to his size. He's not the best separator. He's not the best route runner. He doesn't have the best hands. I know he hasn't always been utilized properly in the red zone, but just some of the miscommunication that we saw last year with Geno Smith, I mean, look, I kind of wanted him to stay, but not at $30 million, right? And even if we take into account the fact that the salary cap is going up exponentially every year, maybe a couple years down the line, that $30 million a year that he would have made in Seattle if he would have, been offered that contract, maybe it wouldn't look as bad. But at the same time, I mean, to pay him $30 million a year, he hasn't had an elite season since Russell Wilson was in town, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. And so I'm actually okay with him going. I did want a first-round pick and some change, but hey, well, I'll take pick number 52. I mean, there's going to be a lot of receivers that will be targeted in the second round of the draft. I know, again, this is kind of old news, but Norb, I haven't heard your thoughts. And so everything you want to say about the whole DK Metcalf trade to Pittsburgh, just lay it all out.
So I got concerned a year ago when the receiver market blew up, right? I mean, Justin Jefferson getting paid. I mean, once you saw that, it was like, oh my God, we are going to be in some financial troubles come March in 2025, because I already knew the market was reset, and I'm sure DK was drooling at knowing what was coming. And I think we all kind of, at least I definitely was thinking, man, it's going to be tough to find a way to keep him and Geno here. But I was just, there's a kind of blind faith that maybe they'll just want to be here so bad they'll work it out. Obviously, that wasn't the case for either of the players. So after it all went down, so I guess I'll reflect first on what happened during the trade, and then kind of my thoughts of him as a player. But I really just like the fact that how the information was released. I think we all did, because it was supposed to be Tyler Lockett celebration Wednesday when the news went down that they were not going to bring him back and they were letting him go. We needed time to feel frustrated and then feel like, okay, but let's be grateful for what he did. And before we even got to say, oh man, they released Tyler, what? DK posted, I don't know if it's him or his agent or whatever, but the word got out that DK wanted to trade. And I don't know if that was on purpose or what, but it's like, man, how can you do Tyler Lockett dirty like that? Like, you can't even give him a chance to have one day to kind of just have his day in the sun to sort of let people, digest that, get over that, and then break that news that you also want out in a much worse tone. Because in the first one, it's like you feel bad for Tyler. You kind of go like, man, I wish Seahawks could have brought him back, but I understand. So you weren't really pissed at anybody. But I felt pissed at DK when he released that because of the timing of it. And then it's like, damn, he wants to trade? We haven't even gotten to negotiate. At least we didn't know. He didn't even talk about negotiations, and already he wants out. So that left a bad taste in my mouth. So when he finally, when it was finally determined, when we found out Sunday night that he was going to the Steelers, I'd heard the Steelers had interest in him. So that wasn't a complete surprise. What's kind of funny about the whole trade, though, is that from what I've heard, DK said he wanted 3 things, obviously besides money. He wanted to go, there's a stable quarterback situation where it's warmer and a contender. Well, I don't know if he got any of those 3 because there's no quarterback there right now still. It's not warm in Pittsburgh, at least not during most of the year. And then a contender? Well, I don't know. I guess they're always kind of in the mix, but I wouldn't call their situation right now a contender. So, I thought it was kind of funny. I don't know if that's just, the Seattle's way of kind of going, well, screw you, DK. Here's what you get. Because, you get what you get. You don't throw a fit, even though you'll probably throw a fit. So that was kind of how that all wrapped up. And, it does leave kind of a bad taste the way that all ended. But once we kind of accepted the fact that he was gone, my feelings reflecting back on him, I think the whole feeling is that what's frustrating, I guess, if he has success somewhere else, whether it's Pittsburgh or somewhere down the line, and we don't know if he will. Maybe he'll be the same guy who's been with us. That guy just feels like he never lived up to his potential, is just the fact that we never unlocked it. Now, whether anyone else will unlock it, we'll never know until he plays it out with other teams. But, I think I'm with you, Steezy, that we all thought he's going to come out of his shell and be the number one guy we all think he's capable of. But in 6 years, this never happened. And I agree. There's so many times where it's like, how do you not catch that football? How do you fumble in that situation? How do you break off your route and let that ball now become intercepted? How do you not high point that when you're the tallest, biggest kangaroo jumping mother effer in the building and you don't win that battle? There were so many times when I was like scratching my head going, I don't understand. How is he not winning this? How is he not dominating that situation right there? And then, of course, you throw in the personal fouls and the flags, and then you just end up with kind of like a head-scratching. I mean, he's been really good, but, man, it's just not as good as I thought. And I think every year we just think, this will be the year he breaks out. This will be the year that it finally gets figured out. And it just, multiple coordinators, multiple quarterbacks, and it just really never has alluded to that, except for the time when he was here with Russell in his earlier years. So, all that said, it's sucks that we never got to untap that, unlock that, but we may never see it. Maybe that's just who he is. A guy who's just maybe has these great skills, but never could put it together. So I'm hoping that's the case. I'll be really bummed if Pittsburgh gets this amazing receiver who just has 1,500 yards, a ton of catches and touchdowns, and makes us look silly. So I hope it doesn't come down to that, but because that's what I feel. I feel like, man, we had him for 6 years and could never unlock the keys to the sports car, and never got out of first or second gear. So, yeah, a lot to be frustrated about. The potential always kept you, tantalized by what could be, and it just never became.
I love that word, tantalize. I will say this, Norb, if the Steelers end up re-signing a Russell Wilson, because right now I'm thinking that Aaron Rodgers will potentially sign with the Vikings. And so the Steelers might not have a choice, but either have to go back to Russ or have to rely on a rookie quarterback. And they're not picking until, 20-something? And so maybe they'd have to get like a Jackson Dart, or if a Shedeur Sanders falls. I just don't know if a rookie quarterback could be what unlocks a DK Metcalf in year one with the Steelers. But if Russell Wilson does return and is the starter come week one, I ain't gonna lie, I could see DK kind of just going off in year one. He's back with Russ. The last time we saw him with Russ, he had, over 1,300 yards. And who knows, maybe Russ gave him, a little bit of insight into Pittsburgh. Because remember, after DK requested his trade, the Seahawks gave him permission to speak to teams. And so what if they fabricated that whole thing? Oh, he wants to go to a warm weather city. He wants to play for a contender. He wants to whatever the stipulations were. What if that was all fabricated to kind of keep things low key, right? And what if they had word prior that I think Russ is coming back? Russ is going to be good things. I know they're good for offense. Maybe Russ kind of sold him on Pittsburgh and was like, "Yo, come to Pittsburgh. I'm gonna be the starting quarterback. I'm gonna feed you. I'm going to get you to the numbers that you've wanted." And so I don't know. That's all just everything that's been in here. None of that, can be confirmed. But those are kind of just some of the thoughts that have been going on in my head. But if Russ doesn't come back, then numbers-wise, I don't know. Because Norb, like you said, I mean, the Steelers, they're not contenders. Mike Tomlin is there. Yeah, not yet, right? Yeah, we can count on them to make the playoffs. But they've always also had the identity of playing smash mouth football, right? Running the football and playing sound defense. And so now all of a sudden, because they acquired a DK Metcalf, now they're going to just be a pass happy football team.
And you got you got two diva mouths to feed now. You got Pickens and you got DK, both who are going to be like, throw me the football, man. So, it's great to have them many weapons, but sometimes too much of a good thing is not a good thing, because if for whatever reason the quarterback, whoever that's going to be, isn't able to feed these guys enough, you can have two very unhappy wide receivers on your team, and that would not be a good look. We've seen that before when DK's not happy. It's not a good look. It's a bad look. So, but yeah, I mean, but then at the same time, Russ, he throws a beautiful deep ball. And, you know, DK's, that's his thing, right? If he can get free and just stretch the defense out, that's one of the things that makes him amazing. The question is, will Russ come back? Will he have the time to throw the deep ball? Because a lot of times he was just, you know, like we've seen, that deep ball is no good if the quarterback doesn't have time to throw it. So, you know, it's going to be an interesting balance. But I think right now it's an interesting move by the Steelers because they have so many holes, so many question marks, and yet they signed two big, you know, star diva receivers. It's like putting the rims on the wheels before you have your transmission figured out. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be the drivetrain to this thing. So,
yeah, I love the car analogies. Noah, one more thing about DK to the Steelers. I got to ask you, who's rocking number 14 in Pittsburgh?
I know, because
right. I mean,
isn't that crazy? They both have the same personality, both types of receivers. One arguably better than the other. Pickens might be the better receiver, but he's been there first. So I feel like he's gonna have to defer to the guy who's got it, right? I mean, what's he gonna go? Man, I know you got the number. You've been here, but man, that's my number. So you got to give it up to me, man. I mean, he's gonna be like, "What? Who are you talking to, man?"
Right. Oh my gosh, bro! The memes all over social media, they've just been going crazy. I mean, the internet is truly undefeated, and I mean, who knows? Maybe they end up trading the George Pickens just because he is extension eligible. But if I'm the Steelers, aside from his talent, I don't know why I'd want to give him $100+ million. Right? I don't think he's really earned that.
Is he in that mode too, where he's ready for an extension? Is it that? But they could keep him and just play him for another year. He's still got a year of club control, huh? Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, I'm sure that DK coming has potentially changed that dynamic a little bit, depending on what they want to do at quarterback. That's the biggest thing, right? When you don't know who your quarterback is, it's like, man, so many unknowns. We were there for a little while. It lasted a weekend. Or no, it was, about a weekend that we had to suffer thinking, who the hell's going to be the quarterback of this team before we got that all settled down Monday. But, yeah, it's crazy. So entertaining, right?
Right. And, you know, like I told you before the show, I mean, it gives us a lot to talk about. I know we still have a lot more to talk about as far as Seattle's additions and the guys that Seattle has re-signed. But one more old news story, if you will, I kind of just want to touch on just a little bit.
Before you do that, one last thing on the DK thing. And the Seahawks play Pittsburgh this year. In Pittsburgh or Dublin, if they play, because the Steelers I think they get a Dublin game, and there's a lot of people thinking, what if the Seahawks play the Steelers in Dublin? I mean, what a game would that be, right? DK against his old team in the first game ever in Ireland. I mean, how cool is that going to be? I'm gonna have to book some tickets for that sucker. Anyway, so cool. Go ahead, man.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Norm. I mean, I think if the NFL, if they're smart, that game will be in Dublin, Ireland. I mean, there are a bunch of narratives surrounding that because let's say they re-sign Russ, right? Then it's Russ and DK.
Oh my God.
Versus the Seahawks. I mean,
I gotta see that. I have to see that. Yeah.
Must-see TV. I mean, the NFL already is must-see TV, but that, sign me up.
With the international thing and Seahawks Martin in your chat. DK versus Witherspoon. I don't know if that would be the matchup. Maybe it would be, but I mean, that's just so much juicy, tantalizing stuff to watch in that game. So we'll have to see.
Oh man, but right, like I was saying, chat. Feel free to drop your guys' comments and thoughts. I haven't had a chance to see your guys' reactions, and so again, I know this is kind of old news, but feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll bring it up as the show kind of goes along. We're not going to spend too much time here because I know that you guys want to hear about Sam Darnold, DeMarcus Lawrence, and all that. But just briefly, Norb, thoughts on the Geno Smith trade to Las Vegas? Because I saw so many 12s on social media, just an absolute disarray, panicking, talking about how, Seattle is such a poorly ran franchise and how Seattle could have gotten more than pick number 92. I'm kind of somewhere in between, but Norb, I'll let you kind of take the floor first. What were your initial thoughts and reactions, and how do you feel about the trade now that Seattle has either upgraded or made a lateral move with the Sam Darnold?
Well, time has made me feel better about it. My first reaction was total shock. That was the one thing I was not expecting. I thought the Ty Lockett I expected. The DK was like, kind of afraid of that. Had no idea about the Geno thing. And I was mad at the Seahawks at first. I thought this was something they screwed up. But then when I heard later that they did offer him, I think 2 years, close to like 40 to 42 million, but Geno pretty much didn't even counter, that he just was like pretty much immediately, I just want to be traded. Who knows exactly how the dynamic of that, we'll never know. We weren't in the room, and no one will probably ever talk about it out there. So we don't know exactly how the negotiations went. But it sounds like bottom line was Geno wasn't exactly working real hard to try to make it work with Seattle. He had a number in mind, and he was not going to go any lower than that. Now, if Pete Carroll's not in at Las Vegas, does this deal still happen? I don't know. Obviously, Pete and Geno have a love fest. Geno owes everything to Pete Carroll for his resurrecting his career. And so, and Pete loves him some Geno Smith. So that little love fest, maybe those guys talked. Maybe he already said, hey, Geno, if I know that you get a lot of flack up there in Seattle, and the fans, they hate on you more than you deserve, man, and you didn't have the protection. I know how good you are, man. So I'll tell you what, no matter what, you got $45 million and you're good here for 3 years, no matter what happens. So just know that. So go and do your negotiation, but you got a place for me if that doesn't work out. Maybe he already knew that before he even sat down at the negotiation table, because it seemed like it was over real fast before it ever started. So the more I looked at it, it was like, okay, maybe I'm not so mad at the Seahawks. Maybe it really was like, if Geno didn't want to be there and he really wanted to get paid $45 million a year and anything less was going to be not worth staying, well, there wasn't much Seattle could do. I don't know if I could even say I wanted Geno Smith at 45. Did I say 45,000? $45 million a year. What are we talking about? $45 million a year. That's a lot. I thought maybe Geno would be somewhere in the mid 30s to high 30s or something, but 45 million. I had to even have to ask myself, do I really think he should be here and still be able to get what we need in terms of offensive line and all that stuff? So after a while, it took a while, but the more I look at it, and now seeing how what it turned into in terms of getting Sam Darnold, I actually feel better about it the more I look at it. It was hard to get over initially because I was one of those guys who argued that I thought Geno Smith was a good quarterback. He just hasn't had the tools or the line, but he's really good. And, then this happens. And so, it was hard at first, but I feel like we actually got the better of the deals. Third round pick, yeah, it's not a lot. But what the money we were saving, not having to commit those resources, I think it was just too much for Seattle to put into. So he kind of forced his way out. And so I'm okay with how things turned out. It was just hard at first because it was kind of like the Russ thing. I was all in for Russ and then it didn't work out. I was all in for Geno and it didn't work out. It kind of just came down to money. But I'm cool with it now. I have to be, right?
Right. And it's funny, Norm, because after Geno was released, I went on X and I kind of just was like, thank you for everything. I tagged Geno Smith. We appreciate everything you did for the city of Seattle. Best of luck, to you and Pete Carroll in Vegas and wherever else you may end up in the future. And then in the replies, I deleted it, right? But in the reply, I replied to my own tweet and I was like, please no Sam Darnold. and then Seattle ends up, signing him. And so I'm gonna be real with you. As soon as Seattle signed him, I went straight to X and deleted that because I was like, I don't want anyone else, using that against me. Nowadays people keep receipts. I wouldn't be surprised if someone took a screenshot.
So screenshot it, you're in trouble now.
Yeah, right. And so I want to put that out there because I think it's funny. And I know some people have already kind of, seen it because it was up for days. And so I know, a good amount of people have seen it. And so I'm not tripping about, kind of just making it known. But, I'm kind of with you, Norb. I'm growing more fond of the move Seattle pivoting to Sam Darnold because not only is he getting paid about $33.5 million a year per over the cap, he's the 18th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. As it stands right now. Now, there could be a couple of extensions that maybe, moves that number around. But I think for the most part, he's outside of the top 15. And so for Seattle to get a quality starting quarterback, a guy look, I get it. He folded in the most pivotal of moments last year. But for the better part of last season, he was an MVP candidate. He was a Pro Bowler. I wouldn't have been surprised if he was an All-Pro. I mean, 35 touchdowns. How many quarterbacks just put up 35 touchdowns just out of nowhere, right? And some people will say, oh, he had Kevin O'Connell. He had, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hockenson, Justin Jefferson. He played in a quarterback-friendly system. I thought this was interesting, though. Former NFL player, he's now an analyst for, I think, Colorado Radio, but Mark Schlereth. I saw an article earlier today, and he kind of talked about how Sam Darnold's resurrection began not in Minnesota, but in San Francisco the year prior, right? He was under a Kyle Shanahan. I also read in that same article that he came to San Francisco willingly. He wanted to back up a Brock Purdy. He turned down starting offers elsewhere, turned down more money elsewhere so that he could learn under one of the quarterback gurus, under the wizard that is a Kyle Shanahan. And we only saw him in one or two games, but and that limited sample size, he didn't look half bad. And so he has experience under that system. The same system that Kevin O'Connell runs is essentially the same that Kyle Shanahan runs. So that's 2 years. And then if you include, hold on, I'm kind of. So what I'm trying to get at is he has 3 years, or he's going into year 3 of the same system. The first year was under Kyle Shanahan. Year 2 was last year under Kevin O'Connell. And because Clint Kubiak runs a similar offense, he's going into year 3 in the same offense. And so, yes, everything isn't equal, right? Seattle obviously doesn't have a Justin Jefferson right now. Seattle doesn't have the same sort of receiving core, or heck, even the offensive line. But I think what helps is that there's continuity now. He's comfortable now. And so Seattle obviously still has to address offensive line. It's tough to kind of rely on rookie receivers, but there's still plenty of veterans on the market. Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper. Who knows? Maybe Seattle pulls off a trade for a T. Higgins. There's a lot of options. And so I know we're today's technically considered day 1, but I think it's day 3. Right? Free agency started on Monday, not today.
Right.
Everything became official today, but free agency started on Monday. And so there's still a lot of names out there. But I also found another fun stat. Sam Darnold led the NFL in most passing yards under pressure in 2024. Ironically, Geno Smith was second. He was right behind them with 1,271. And then third was a Joe Burrow with 1,215. Again, I know a lot of people are going to say these are Minnesota Vikings numbers. These are, the supporting cast that he had, and that's kind of why he had put up numbers like this. But again, continuity in the same system. Having played for the Jets and the Panthers in the years past, it just hasn't been conducive to being successful in the NFL. This might be a stretch, but I see him kind of following the same sort of career arc as a Baker Mayfield. He signed a deal similar to what Sam Darnold signed, but in Tampa Bay, what was it, like a year ago, about 3 years and $100 million. And look at Baker Mayfield now. He's found a home.
He's found his place.
Bay. He's found his place. And maybe he'll never live up to that billing as the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And he was taken ahead of guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. But if Sam Darnold were to follow in the footsteps of a Baker Mayfield, I mean, heck, this is a win-win for Seattle. Like you said, Seattle gained a 3rd-round pick, got 7 years younger. You're paying your starting quarterback about $12 to $13 million less. I don't know how you could really complain. I mean, there's still fans that are mad. And so I don't get it. I really don't.
Well, the other advantage they get, too, is that, a lot of people say, we should have just drafted a quarterback this year. But, this is not the year to really necessarily find your franchise quarterback, right? So by having Sam Darnold, it buys you time where you don't feel like you got to get him now and rush him out there now. You could have Sam Darnold for this year. We don't have to draft a quarterback, invest in the offensive line, which is what we really need to do anyway for anybody to succeed eventually, whether it's year 1, year 2, year 3 down the line. And then if as long as Sam Darnold is just hold steady, we like him to be an upgrade from Geno. But even if he's like where Geno was, we were right there, right? We were just a few plays here and there away from making the playoffs as it was. So we get past this year, and then let's say we got him for another year. We then draft a quarterback, for the future. He can learn under Sam Darnold for a year, and then he takes over in year 3, right? So, I mean, unless Sam Darnold's killing it, then they maybe just, stays under him for a couple years until the time is right to hand the baton off. But this kind of buys some time. And, I feel like it is kind of you brought up those stats, and there's a lot of comparisons. I think you could take Geno and Sam Darnold, and really it's like they have so many similar aspects from them. They both came out of college looking like pretty good prospects. They both went to the Jets to have a sucky start to their careers. They both had to get them resurrected years later. And now here they are, both kind of earning themselves back into a franchise quarterback role with an opportunity to prove that they are the guy to be able to lead their teams to the future, right? And the advantage, again, is just Sam Darnold is a younger guy, so he's got more time ahead of him. And versus, we all kind of knew Geno Smith is like, if he was going to sign again for the Seahawks, it would probably be his last contract anyway. So this really kind of just is I think, a win-win given the circumstances, given the money situation that Geno was putting up there for the Seahawks to have to, pony up. It all kind of just, other than putting it all out there and just trying to draft a quarterback of the future this season, which isn't a great, the odds are not in your favor here, especially again when you got so many holes to fill. This was really probably the best option, and it worked out, I think, pretty good for everybody. And it'll be fun to watch as this season unfolds. We'll be able to watch blow for blow. It's going to be like, okay, let's see the Sam Darnold, the Geno Smith experiment game by game. Who's having the better year? Geno Smith, is he going to be killing it in Vegas, finally giving them a decent quarterback? Is Sam Darnold going to be like turning things around? The comparisons will be tantalizing again to watch side by side who's having the better season, which coaches, what offensive line is having better success, and seeing how the things come together. It'll be fascinating to watch, but hopefully we get the better of that. But I was wishing a lot more happy wishes for Geno at first when I thought it was more like the Seahawks not wanting him here, and then when I found out it was more like he wanted more money, I was like, well, maybe I'm not rooting so hard for you now, because if you didn't want to be here, well, you don't want to be here, there's not much we can do about it. So, good luck to him. But, Sam Darnold, we're rolling with you, man. So let's get her done. Let's just get some offensive linemen, though. That's what we need for sure to help not just the quarterbacks, but get our running game going, too. Because we got a great stable running backs who just can't get out of their own way because they got guys in the backfield already making tackles before they even get the handoff. So we got to fix that stat.
And I have no doubt in my mind that Seattle will. Right. Real quick though, Norb, you talked about how Geno, he was offered an extension. What I found a little funny was that after he turned down Seattle's offer, him and his agent didn't come back with a counteroffer. And so it's like, was it the DK trade that led to him just wanting out? Because if Seattle, I'm sure they didn't disrespect him with their offer, or maybe they did. And maybe that's why him and his camp didn't, come back with a counter offer. But for me, that's just, I don't know. I'm a little bewildered by that. Like, was it the DK trade? Like, just thoughts on that. Do you think that perhaps trading away DK kind of pushed Geno out the door?
I thought at first that because that news came down first that that DK wanted a trade, that maybe as soon as he saw that, it's like, well, who the hell am I throwing the ball to? I'm not going to come back to this unstable situation where we have no receivers. But it could also be that, I think also, I think we all knew, and I think Seattle's offer, the biggest thing maybe wasn't the money amount, that was part of it, but it was also the duration, right? I think Geno wants a longer, at least 3-year deal. And I think the Seahawks were only wanting to give him 2. So maybe that was the other thing too. He wanted that sort of longevity thing that after 2 years, he's not going to get kicked to the curb kind of deal. So maybe that was the thing that he was insulted by, less than the money per year. That's the only thing I can think of, is that maybe that's what he was looking for, that I assume he's going to get from Pete Carroll. So, the DK thing, it's hard to know, right? I mean, there's so many whispers that happen behind closed doors that we don't know, that we're not privy to. But I'm sure the DK leaving didn't help, right? Because he's a great target to throw to, and then he's going to be gone. That's a little bit tough to know that you just lost 2 of your best receivers and you're stuck with 1. I'm sure that didn't exactly sweeten the pot either. So, yeah, it may have had an effect, but I think more so it was the contract, the amount, but even more importantly, the number of years that the Seahawks were willing to give him, in my opinion.
Right. And I know we're talking about Sam Darnold, but just one more Geno Smith question. Are you okay with the compensation? Because, again, like I said earlier, so many fans were kind of tripping and thought that Seattle could have asked for more in return. So pick number 92, was that adequate enough for you?
Yeah, it was disappointing, right? You think for a quarterback, you'd think DK gets a higher pick return than the quarterback. I mean, that you wouldn't normally think that it would work that way, but I don't know if you blame the Seahawks for that because that's just what the team was willing to give you, right? You can say, well, I'm not doing it unless you give us higher than that, but then you don't do the deal. And then where are you stuck at if you don't, definitely as in the DK deal, because I know some people are like, we better get a first round pick or it's a blown trade. But what are you going to do? Not get that deal and go, sorry, DK, we wanted a first for you and they're only offering a second. So you're stuck with us for another year. So you're just going to have to suck it up and grin and bear it. Really? You have DK miserably on your team pouting and not wanting to be here? That's just a disaster. And I'm sure nobody wanted that with Geno either. So they're kind of at the mercy of the market. I mean, it's just basically, I think it's more telling of what the league thinks about the player as opposed to the team making a bad deal, because you can only take whatever's offered. And if they're not willing to offer more, they're only going to offer more if they feel like they're in a competition for that player and they go, oh, I don't want that player going to this team. We better pony up and give them a better deal. Let's give them a second or a first. But if they're not willing to give it and that's the only option you have, well, then it's like either you do it or you don't. So I feel like the Seahawks' hands were tied, because they didn't have any leverage to bargain a better deal. I don't know any other team that they were talking to that Geno was potentially going to. It just seemed like as soon as it was over, boom, he's going to the Raiders. Did you ever hear anything like any other teams that Geno was potentially going to? It seemed like it was instantly. That's why I think there was something going on with Pete Carroll and him, because, like I said, hypothetical that he and Pete talked. He's like, hey man, come over here. We'll give you the deal you want. Just go through the motions and come on over. I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like Stinky Pete got his hands in on things and just told Geno, "You come on over, man. We got a place for you. Just see what they do." But I tell you, man, they're not going to pay you as much as we're going to pay you. That's just my, feeling. And it works out well because, how long is Pete Carroll going to be going for, right? He loves Geno. He's the one who resurrected his career. Pete Carroll, is he going to coach longer than Is it going to go 3 years longer, 4 or 5? Maybe this is like enough time that gels with the amount of years that he thinks he's going to be head coaching for. So maybe it's just a perfect fit for both sides. But we'll see who gets the better end of the deal. We'll see how that. It depends what the Seahawks do with that third round pick. If they find, like you're saying, they find those diamonds in the rough, they turn that third round pick into the future star, whether it be a lineman or a receiver or something or tight end, and that guy becomes like, man, this guy, we got him from the third round. We're gonna all be going, remember that Geno Smith deal? Woo, aren't we glad we did that one? Because boy, it's paying off in spades now. We just didn't see it coming. I'm hoping we're saying something like that when we talk about that third round pick being like the pick of 2025 that redefined a franchise. Russell Wilson was a third round pick, wasn't he not?
Mm.
So there are gems to be found in those later rounds.
Right. And Noah, I think you actually answered my question for me. Because remember how I was a little curious as to why Geno and his camp didn't offer a counter offer. Maybe it's because him and Pete Carroll already had something going on the low. And so he knew he was out. And so it's like, oh, no matter what happens, I don't want to be seen as a guy who wanted to just get out so he could reunite with Pete. So let's just have this happen and let's have this happen. And, I could go over there and no one's going to question me. And so who knows? Again, that's purely speculation. It's just
but it makes sense, right? Sometimes when you have to throw out anything and just go off of what feels like it common sense tells you, just the writing on the wall feels a lot like, man, this was just way too quick. And a negotiation, that doesn't make any sense if it was a true negotiation. It was
right.
Yeah.
Because if you're actually negotiating, a counter offer is the least that you could expect, right? That's what a negotiation is. Like you hear from both sides.
In any business transaction, whether it's real estate, we do transactions all the time in my line of business, and we always talk. We never want to be the first one to have to throw the number out there, because once you throw that number out, they're going to counter, so you're never going to get what that first number is. Well, there was never a counter. That's not even negotiation. That's just a show up and listen and then walk out the door. That's not a negotiation. That's just you quit, in my opinion. So,
right.
Weird, So, again, if Pete Carroll was not the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't think this deal happens the way it does. They might still be talking. He might still be looking around for a trade partner if it's not Pete Carroll on the Raiders.
Noah, I said this earlier, but I promise this is the last thing I want to bring up about Geno. It's funny because around the holiday season, I think this was like a week before Christmas, I was at the Seattle team shop at South Center Mall. And Geno Smith's jersey at that time was already on sale 30% off. And then at the time, DK Metcalf, his jersey was, I think it was you buy a DK Metcalf jersey, you get another Seahawks jersey 50% off. But Geno Smith's jersey was on sale. DK's jersey was on sale. A couple years ago, before Russell Wilson was traded, a couple months prior to that, his jersey was also on sale 30% off. And I had someone at Lids tell me that, oh yeah, they usually know beforehand, and that's why like they put these jerseys on sale because
that's crazy, isn't it?
That we don't. And so I remember I posted literally a picture of Geno Smith's jersey with the 30% off on Instagram, posted numbers, and people were saying, oh, don't pay that any mind. It's just Liz doing their due diligence, trying to make some of their money back. But bam, a couple months later, he's gone, and he didn't even get back. Yeah. And so. Look, I don't want to, we don't have to jump into this rabbit hole, but it's like, they say all the time, oh, the NFL is scripted. Well, who knows? Maybe they knew this months ago.
I know. And I was going to say, that wasn't the first time you've done the jersey conspiracy thing, because I remember you did that with the Russell thing, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
Maybe that's what we need to, anytime we're not sure about a player going to his final year of the contract, we should just go to Liz and hang out there and see what the jersey prices come out to be. Because that's going to tell you who's going to stay and who's going to go. So that is crazy, though. I mean, it makes sense, but isn't that wild to think if there is a connection that a retail store has some inside knowledge about what the player transaction is going to be 3 months before they happen, right? You said it was December, right? So that was almost 3 months ago. I mean, is that just coincidence, or there's some legitimate connection there? I mean, that's something.
And look, Noah, one more thing, though, and this isn't even NFL related, but the same thing could be said about the NBA. If you're familiar with Donovan Mitchell, who plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers, before he was traded there, he was on the Jazz. And I remember I was at the Seattle team shop. I was at a Lids. A couple months before he was traded to the Cavs, Donovan Mitchell's Utah Jazz jersey, 30% off. And so I'm just like, this has happened way too often for me to think it's a coincidence.
We need to investigate this more. Maybe there's more signings of evidence of this that we just aren't paying attention. That you're the first to really uncover the connection to this Lids/retail conspiracy to what's happening with these moves, because that is pretty wild, man. That is crazy that you can foresee that, but it makes sense.
Right.
If they do know, get that money while they can.
Right, and a lot of people were calling me crazy, just saying like, "Oh, you're just putting conspiracy theories out there. Like, we don't want to see that, we don't want to hear that." And I don't know. I mean, I'm 3 for 3. So.
I said, and they're a heck of a lot more reliable than general managers and coaches being interviewed saying, "Oh yeah, no, he'll be back next year." Oh, first thing I've ever heard of that. All that turned out to be completely not true, or at least maybe they meant it at the time, but it certainly didn't pan out that way. So far, it's Lids 3, coaches 0. Because remember before the Russ trade, everybody was denying it. Oh no, we're not moving, we're not trading Russ. Oh yeah, for Russ, I want to be here in Seattle. I want to win more Super Bowls. I want to do it in Seattle. All that bull crap. I mean, they all knew what was going on, but they kept feeding us the line because that's kind of the game they have to play when it comes down to all the deal making and all that stuff. But man, got to spend more time walking around the Lids and just checking out what's on sale today. Taking some notes.
He's out of there in a couple months.
Yep. Oh man, that's wild.
All right, y'all. Well, enough about Geno. I know we spent a lot of the show talking about Geno. Before we move on to DeMarcus Lawrence, you guys, most of you guys are probably already subscribed to NorbCam, but for those of you guys that are going to catch the replay who are new, please hit that subscribe button at NorbCam on YouTube, at NorbCam, X, Instagram. I don't think he's leaving just yet, so don't take that as a sign that he's leaving.
No, I'm good. I know we talked before the show that, we're going to go more for an hour. I said, man, we say that every time, and then it's an hour and a half later, we're still talking. So
we're still talking.
I'm yours, however long you want to go for, man. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nora. But again, y'all, at NorbCam, all social media platforms, please do me a favor and do him a favor by following, subscribing, all that good stuff. Before we move on to DeMarcus Lawrence, though, I do just want to take a quick second to say all super chats are greatly appreciated. And because this is my first show back in 3 or 4 months, I'm feeling generous. And so whoever has the largest super chat donation, it could be 50 cents, it could be $5, it could be $10. I'm going to pick a lucky winner, or that person is the lucky winner of a never before released Team Steezy zip up.
Ooh, look at this. Got the merch going on. Nice.
Yes. So, and Norb, I got to get you one. Matter of fact, what's your size?
XL. XL works for me. I like it nice and kind of loose.
Okay. Do you so I have a navy blue one as well, but do you want a navy blue or do you want a gray?
You got 2 colors to choose from?
I do.
I might, I have a lot of blue stuff because I have so much Seahawks gear. So I have a ton of blue. I might go with that gray. I don't have a whole lot of gray stuff. That gray looks pretty sharp, man. That's sweet.
All right. Well, that's a bet. XL for Norb. Let me just write that down real quick.
I like it. Is this brand new? Did you just come out with this?
Well, actually, Norb, I haven't even posted. I haven't dropped it. So people don't even know about this yet. And so that's why I'm saying,
so
like,
news to me. It's about damn time, man.
Yeah,
it's about time.
I know people have been asking for like hoodies and zip ups and whatnot for a while now. And so, like I said, I'm feeling generous. I've yet to release this, but if you donate today, whatever it is, I know there, might be a couple people coming in, but again, the highest super chat. So whoever puts in the highest super chat tonight, at any point tonight, you win one of these. Nice.
That's a deal, man. You gotta get like a eBay auction style going, where it's like start of $1, $1.50, $2, and they just start to outdo each other and get a bidding war going on. Kind of like Gino didn't have. He just went right to Pete Carroll. Just didn't need no super chat bid war. Just right to the top.
He knew what he wanted. He knew what he wanted.
Yeah, there was no doubt. I was set in stone. He was in cahoots with Liz.
Funny. Right, just go to Liz next time. No, but it's funny that you bring up a super chat bidding war, because I actually had that, I think about a year ago. I said the same thing. I was like, whoever has the highest super chat, wins a Team Steezy hat. And then so I had someone, I think, donate like $1, and then someone donated $2, and then someone donated $5, and then someone donated like $10, and then it kept going up from there. And I was like, you know what? You guys are both winners, and so they both got free hats.
So it's just 2 going back and forth. How high did it go to? 2. What was the highest one, man?
I stopped at like 10 or 15.
Okay.
They were going back and forth, and so I was just like, okay, you guys have donated enough. Let me stop at 10 or 15, and
that's cool. That's a good way to go. There. That's a good move.
But apologies, you guys, for the interruption. Just kind of wanted to throw that out there. We were talking about DeMarcus Lawrence, and so here's a stat that I found. Everyone has probably seen this by now. Usually when a signing happens, all sorts of stats are posted. But DeMarcus Lawrence, since 2023, has the 3rd highest run defense grade at 91.0. I know that's not the largest sample size, right? And then like we talked about at the top of the show, he missed a majority of last season. And so this is primarily off of his 2023 season. He might not be the sack artist that he once was, but he's elite against the run. He has familiarity with Adam Dirty, Seattle's defensive coordinator. He is coming off a down year by his standards. And so I know damn well he's fired up. He's ready to kind of go out there and show everybody what he's capable of. I know a lot of people have kind of forgotten about it, DeMarcus Lawrence, me included, right? When news broke that Seattle signed and brought in a DeMarcus Lawrence, I was like, oh my gosh, like I almost forgot he was in the league. But because he had missed such a large chunk of last year, I think that's one of the reasons why he's kind of, flown under the radar. But for me, I look at this as a Draymond Jones replacement, but an upgrade, right? A significant upgrade. He's going to be what Draymond Jones was supposed to be for this football team. And this move also tells me that the Seahawks are not rebuilding. Norb, you and I talked about this earlier. A lot of 12s, people on social media, people who aren't even fans of the Seahawks are penciling in the Seahawks as quote unquote throwing in the towel, as tanking for Arch Manning, as this is a major step back. You trade away 3 franchise players and this is the haul that you bring in, Sam Darnold, whatever, yada, 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 yada. I think not. I think this is more of a retool. A top 10 defense is returning most of their guys. Like, the guys are intact. This team is well coached. Mike Macdonald won 10 games in his first year as a head coach. We still have the draft. There's 10 picks. There's still a plethora of free agents out there. This team is by no means rebuilding. Now, I know a lot of you guys in the chat are going to disagree. So feel free to drop your thoughts. But Norb, I know I kind of went on a little tangent there, but first, talk to me about DeMarcus Lawrence, your thoughts. What do you think he's going to bring to the table? And last but not least, is this team rebuilding or retooling?
Oh, I thought it was rebuild initially before Monday. In fact, I had to change my thumb for a video I was about to post. I said big question mark rebuild, and then they picked up Darnold, and then I changed it. So that kind of changed everything, because at first I thought maybe this was, but the thing is, I mentioned again the whole thing with Mike Macdonald and his car on one side of the garage and the offensive car on the other side. He was slowly dialing in this defense, and so I've liked all the moves that he's done, shoring up the defense. I think we all agreed that when we came out of the 2024 season, the first priority was we got to get Ernest Jones signed, right? I mean, I think nobody was worried about DK. Nobody's worried about Geno. We were all like, get Ernest Jones signed. And quietly, I think amongst all the noise, it's kind of fallen in the cracks a little bit because there was so much noise from the other stuff. But getting that Ernest Jones deal was huge, because obviously he was the move we needed last year to stabilize that defense after casting off our 2 linebackers that didn't work out. And he was amazing. And we all knew we needed to get him done. And they got him done at a good team-friendly deal at like $13 million a year. And he sounds like he's just happy to be here. He's tired of moving every month, it seems like. So I think he just wanted to have a stable situation. We caught him at a good time when I think he just wanted to I like it here. I'm here to stay. So that was like the first piece that was just the best news that the Seahawks could do in free agency. Leading that to this now, everything they've done, they got Jaron Reed locked in. And then, this move here is just another move that I just feel very confident in what Mike Macdonald and this staff is doing with rebuilding the defense. We saw the results of that. They started off, the previous year, one of the worst defenses in the league. And then by the end of the season, we had a couple of step backs there against Green Bay. But in general, it was a better defense than the year started. And so I like where he's going with it. And, it feels like another move that, like I said, like Draymond Jones, what we wanted him to be. But the fact that, he's good against stopping the run, which we all know that's such a big part of the Seahawks defense. The biggest issue we had up until this year, before Ernest Jones, we were still struggling to stop the run. It was frustrating watching us just let guys run, find these gaps, and just blast through. And so if this is a guy who can help continue to shore up and stop the run, and then maybe have some pressure in there once in a while. Again, 3 sacks in 4 games last year. He's still got something in the tank. So if you get a solid run defender, a leader in the clubhouse with experience, and a guy who can add some pressure here and there, especially with the way this line is built now. You got Jaron Reed, you got Big Cat, then they got the young guys, Boye Mafe. I mean, I love the way this defensive line is growing. We just need to get some of that action on the offensive side, and we'll be in great shape. But yeah, I think the move is great, and it's not a real expensive deal, so it feels kind of like a team-friendly deal. Was it $42 million, 3 years, but only $18 million guaranteed? That means it's kind of like a relatively low-risk deal for Seattle. So I think it's a win-win here. And whatever you can bring to it, I mean, it's going to be just another weapon on the defensive line to help all of our players on the back end. So, yeah, I like it. I'm just hoping, that this injury issue is not a big deal and he can keep playing because he is getting up there in age. He's a little long in the tooth. That's the only thing.
Right. I mean, I agree with everything that you said. And like I mentioned, he has that familiarity with Add and Dirty. And so for anyone else that's new to the defense, whoever else Seattle brings in via the draft or in free agency, now you have another leader on the football field and off the football field that can kind of help mentor some of these younger guys. And so there seems to be a theme with Seattle's free agency signings. Again, Sam Darnold has that familiarity with the Clint Kubiak, DeMarcus Lawrence, Add and Dirty. Another guy that Seattle signed, wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who spent some time under a Clint Kubiak last year. He started the year with the Buffalo Bills, had minimal impact after the Bills traded for an Amari Cooper. He was released, subsequently signed by the Saints, and in the last 8 games of the year, he had 4 touchdowns. He had 4 games with 50-plus yards. He was the Saints' number 1 receiver with Chris Olave out, with Rashid Shaheed out, and he looked more than decent in that role. It was to the point where, and for those of you guys that know me, I'm an avid fantasy football player. I actually was looking to add him in all my fantasy football leagues because it's like, look, he's the number 1 option. He's catching deep ball after deep ball. Derek Carr is targeting him like crazy. And so maybe he has a little bit more in the tank than, people realize. I know his stints with the Chiefs, with the Packers, the Bills, they've all been underwhelming. But again, he's had, I think, some of his best success under a Clint Kubiak, albeit in a small sample size, 8 games. That's not a lot, but he was the number 1 and he thrived. His entire career, he's always been known as a deep threat. And so teams know that. They game plan against that, and he's still here catching 50, 60, 70-yard bombs. And so I don't expect him to be the number 1. I don't expect him to be the only deep threat that Seattle brings in. But for him to go out there, JSN can still do his thing, do his Dougie in the short to intermediate areas of the field. But I like it. I would love it if Seattle were to bring in, let's say, a Cooper Kupp, right? Or an Amari Cooper. Because at the end of the day, Valdez-Scantling is more of a depth receiver. But I do love what I saw last year. And if you could build off of that for a year and $5.5 million, Seattle got a steal. So, Norm,
yeah.
You don't have to spend too much time here, but talk to me about MVS.
Yeah, you kind of said it, man. There's not much more to add to that. You add the familiarity with the system. You get the same coordinator that he had where he was productive last year. And, he's coming in with no pressure because he's not expected to be the number 1. He's not expected to replace DK, but he's kind of built he's tall like DK. He's just not big like DK. DK is like 6'4", 240 or something, just a tank, right? A fast tank. He's 6'3" or 6'4" and more like 200 and something and change. So he's a skinny version of DK and a little bit older. Still pretty quick and everything, but him coming in, it's not like he has to, like DK going to Pittsburgh, he's got the pressure on him, right? He's going to have to earn that $33 million deal that he's got. He doesn't. Valdez-Scantling doesn't have to do that. The pressure's not on him to have to carry the load. He's coming in, I think, expecting to be like a number 3 guy, maybe 2 if he can rise up in that chart, depending on what they do with the other positions. But I think it works. I mean, what's not to like about it? It feels like a good fit, low risk guy who's still productive in a familiar system and no pressure. So, it feels like he's got everything to gain, and I'm guessing there's some incentives in there. So I'm sure he's going to be willing to try to, earn that extra money. So, yeah, I like it. It's just, it'd be one thing if they gave up a bunch of money to do it, but it's a pretty low risk deal, and that's the best part about it. There's always that feeling, right? Every player has a certain point where you go, I love the player, I love the player, I love the player. Too expensive, right? Gino's the same way. He's like, I love him at 30, and I'll probably still love him at 38. 45? I'm not sure if I'm as big of a fan. That's the same thing here. If Valdez-Scantling was commanding some outlandish, expensive thing, well, yeah, no, I wouldn't want to do it. But at a deal that he is with, that's a 1-year deal, right? $5.5 million plus incentives or something. I mean, that's nothing. That's to me, it's all upside. So, and then if it works out great, well, they work out a deal for the following year. If it doesn't, well, we'll just see you. Thanks for your help. appreciate your contributions. And it's kind of a no-brainer. So can't say I don't like it. Seems works for me.
Right, and just one quick nugget here. This is no disrespect, or this isn't a shot at Darius Slayton or a Diami Brown. I know those guys are significantly younger than an MVS, but those guys were making north of $10 million in free agency. Now, if Seattle had signed a MVS or a depth receiver like any of those guys that I just mentioned for $10+ million, then I'd be like, what are we doing?
What the hell are we doing? Yeah,
right.
Exactly. At 5.5.
Not that. 5.5 is half of that. And so that I'm fine with. If we're gonna draft, or if we want to bring in complimentary pieces at receiver, if it's not one of these upper tier guys in free agency, then just get your guys in the draft, right? I mean, the wide receiver class in this draft class isn't as stacked as it has been in years past, right? A lot of people are hyping up the running backs and the tight ends, the trenches, but there are still a bunch of receivers out there. I was at the Combine in Indiana about a week ago, and the day that I attended was, I think, when the receivers and the quarterbacks and the running backs all performed. There are a bunch of receivers that I like. Ted McMillan, I know he didn't participate, but the big body out of Arizona, I don't know if Seattle can get him at 18. He might be gone before then. But Texas's Matthew Golden, the fastest receiver in this year's draft class, I mean, he's an option. There are a bunch of guys to like at wide receiver. And so bringing in a depth piece like this at that price point, I mean, I changed my answer. I said I like it. I don't love it. I do love it. Now, I mean, now that I'm saying these things, I do love it. And so, Norb, I think you and I agree. We don't have to spend as much time on this one. Not to I guess, disrespect him, but a depth piece, right? An offensive line. He's a swing tackle / guard, but Josh Jones spent some time with Baltimore last year, so he does have that familiarity, even if it is on the other side of the football with the Mike McDonald. He's going to be in that George Fant role. And so, what is it? 1 year, $4.75 million. I don't know what it is, but John Schneider seems to have an infatuation with guys that could play both tackle and guard. But again, he has that familiarity, as has been the theme of all these signings. And so that one I don't love. I do like. But Norb, anything you want to add?
I don't know much about him, so I can't really speak to his level of performance. When I first saw it, I was kind of excited because I was just looking for anything offensive line. And then a lot of the responses I said when I posted, okay, here we go. And then some people were like, depth piece. Nobody seemed excited about what he was really going to bring other than, like I said, depth or, nothing you'd get really excited about. And obviously, if you're only paying him $4.something million, he's not going to be some game-changing offensive lineman. So then again, in the scope of our current roster as it's constructed with offensive linemen, maybe an average guy like this actually fits in better than what it's been. So, who's to say that he's not going to be any better to compete for a starting job than what we've got right now? So a lot of it, I think when it comes to the entire, obviously we're all looking for the Seahawks to make a big splash, whether it was in free agency or in the draft, right? There's no question that we all want that. But the other thing we have to keep in mind here is that with the new coordinator, with Kubiak and a new line coach and a whole different scheme, a whole different brand of football, it's going to be very different from what we saw last year under first-year coordinator Ryan Grubb. And it's this whole outside zone thing. And I spent some time because I kept hearing that, it's an outside zone. You have to have different players. I dove in deeper because I wanted to really know what are they talking about when they say it's this outside zone. So, what it really means is instead of having big dudes who are just huge and you just take on the guy right in front of you, there's just a lot more lateral movement and flow that the linemen have to do. Oftentimes they'll double team a player and then one of those guys breaks off and takes on the linebacker behind. So it's just less than of a just road grader straight ahead, push your guy down the field. There's a lot more movement, and you got to have guys who are quicker on their feet who can play into that system. And from what I'm hearing, it just sounds like a lot of the players that we have, even currently on the roster, might flourish better under this new system as opposed to what they struggle with in previous systems. So not to say that they don't need to do anything, but maybe if they have a scheme that fits better the players that we have already, maybe already by that alone will improve our offensive running game without even counting the additions that I'm expecting them to make in the draft or hopefully in free agency maybe. So I guess I'm trying to keep an open, optimistic mindset that this new system will by itself elevate our offensive line play just in the nature of how they use them, as opposed to feeling like our line just sucks and there's never any way they're going to get any better. Must be weird, man. If you're an offensive lineman for the Seahawks who's a current lineman, to be lumped into this category of you guys are the worst freaking line in the entire NFL. You suck. I wonder what it's like to be those guys feeling like they walk around with this big L on their forehead and nobody believes in them. They all want them traded or replaced by something better. You'd think that light a fire under your butt in the offseason. Like, I'm going to get in the gym. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to go out there and prove these suckers wrong because I could play this position. I am not the garbage can traffic cone that everybody says I am. So I'm just wondering how these guys go into it thinking, I'm going to prove that I can stand out and be a good lineman and not the trash that everybody thinks I am. You know what I mean? Must be weird to be in that position.
I'm right there with you, Norb. I've always wondered that, because that's been a theme in Seattle for the last, decade now?
Ever since
the trade of Max Unger, right?
Max Unger, yeah.
10 years, right? And so I don't know, we've had in Seattle individual talent that performs, right? So, for example, once upon a time, Russell Okung was here. He was an above-average left tackle. Charles Cross, right now, he's an above-average left tackle when healthy. Abe Lucas, above average at right tackle. So individually,
he's finally healthy.
Happened pieces, hopefully, yeah. Right? And so I don't know, but I mean, look, someone over here said. And SL Hazard, what's up? Thanks for popping out, by the way. So he said, or he or she said, he had me in the first half, not going to lie. But John cooked. He's not going to sign O-line. He's going to draft him. Well, he better because he hasn't signed anybody. I know there's a Teven Jenkins.
Right.
There, and so who knows? I know Seattle tried to bring in a Will Fries, and he ended up going for the long-term security. But according to Bob Condotta, he also, I think he had posted this on X, he reported that Seattle wanted to bring in Will Fries for a physical, but couldn't do so until Wednesday. But Will Fries and his camp didn't want to wait until Wednesday to sign a contract. So I think that's why they agreed to that 5-year massive $88 million contract with the Vikings. So who knows if free agency, I guess, was technically legal on Monday, maybe Seattle would have gave him 5 years if he passed his physical. I don't know. Maybe we'll never know.
Weird deal. Yeah.
Right. But SL Hazard, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope you're right because before we wrap up the show here, I thought this was an interesting fact. But with the departure of Trey Brown, he signed with the Niners, and the departure of Stone Forsythe, he signed with the Giants. Seattle's 3-man 2021 draft class is no more. D. Eskridge was released last year. The 2019 draft class with the trade of DK Metcalf is also no more. And so a lot of these recent drafts and their respective classes have been below average, to say it as nice as I possibly can. And so I know we've had, we picked up Arik Woolen in 2022, Charles Cross, K9, 2023, Devin Witherspoon, and JSN. But these other classes that preceded that, 2021 class, 2019 class, it's only 2025. It's only been 5-6 years. And so to not have anybody under contract from those draft classes speaks to how badly and how poorly Seattle has drafted overall. And so the reason why I titled this stream John Schneider's Last Stand in Seattle is because if he doesn't perform this draft, I'm never one to call for anyone's job, but I think it might be time to start asking how long he's long for Seattle if this draft class, if he doesn't succeed.
That's a really good point. And, it kind of reminds, one of the things that, we've kind of seen the John Schneider philosophy, right? He doesn't overpay in free agency. He's never tied into those big splash signings early on. You always wait. He seems to always wait. Sam Darnold, the exception, but normally it's like kind of how it is right now, right? We're waiting for the big O-line signing. It just hasn't happened for whatever reason. And on draft day, right, we have first-round picks. How often do we trade out of that for more picks later? Well, maybe it's time to let's get a better quality pick rather than a bunch of junk ones, because not to say that we can't get good stuff, but obviously if you're not keeping any of your guys from an entire draft class from only a few years ago, maybe those multiple picks you traded down for, if they didn't amount to anything, well, then you just wasted the high picks. Maybe you could have gotten one guy who would have been a star and would have made a difference over the next few years versus having traded back and just having a bunch of picks that amounted to nothing, right? Quality versus quantity. So yeah, that's something I feel like John Schneider's gotten a pass for like 10 years plus because of what he did in 2010, 11, and 12. We always consider him a master, GM and drafting, being able to pull all those draft picks. But we bring up that fact that, back then, Pete Carroll was just fresh out of the college game. He knew all the players that were coming out of college, because he was just out of that place. He was just out of USC, knowing who were coming up the ranks. So for the next 4 years, he kind of had a beat on who were the players that were in the college game. And it seemed like the further they got away from Pete being in tie with the college game, the less effective the drafts became over time. Now, I don't know if that's for sure, but it sure seemed like they did their most home runs in the first, from 2010 to about 2012. That's when they really raked in the draft capital that made him famous as a GM. But yeah, more recently, I mean, you can even argue, did we really make the best call last year, Byron Murphy? I want to say that was a great move. But man, we could have gotten Jared Verse, who was the defensive rookie of the year last year, and he was one of the guys who kind of made Sam Darnold look real bad against that playoff game that they lost. We could have had Jalen Carter. I'm not saying I don't like these players. I like Devin Witherspoon, right? I like Jason. But man, it's like there's a couple players that, looking at how it's turned out, some of these guys are doing pretty good on those other teams. So, and those are the obvious top round guys. But all these other ones, the ones like the fact that you just mentioned, the 21 and was it 21 and 20? You said that none of those guys were around? 19. Yeah. I mean, that's sad, right? That I don't know how many numbers there were in these classes, and not a single one of them is on the team. Because when you think about how well they drafted 2012, how many of those guys were just like home runs? But we haven't gotten close to that in a while. And we've had some really bad swings and misses. I mean, those, some of the ones for those classes aren't even really the ones worth mentioning. But, some first rounds, early second round picks just were, well, that was a complete misfire. So we got to hit it. I'm with you. Like we got to hit it on this drive. We got how many picks? We had like 10 picks in the first 92 picks. Is that what it is? Or 10 total?
Total picks, and then we have 5 in the top 100.
Five in the top 92, and then 10 total. We have a lot of stuff to work with. So it's their job to figure out how to get the max so that this team can finally look like a team that can contend.
Right. Well said, Norb. One last, and we'll go through this rapid fire before we do wrap up the show here. I'm just curious, in the chat, feel free to drop your answers as well. Who should the Seahawks look to sign next? Like, we talked about the draft. We talked about the guys that Seattle has brought in. I know Over the Cap and Spotrac has yet to update their websites, but if my math is correct, and this is just an estimation, so don't quote me on this, after all these contracts that Seattle has signed, after the extensions, Seattle should still have somewhere between 20 to 30 million, anywhere in that range as far as cap space, and that's with every signing taken into consideration. And so that being said, Norb, we'll start with you, and then I'll put some of the chat's answers, on the screen here. Here's some of the guys that I would like. Maybe a Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, Teven Jenkins.
You stole my thunder right there.
Yeah. This is your list.
Definitely the first one on that list for sure, and Brandon Scherff was on that list as well. But keep going.
That's it, really. I mean, for me, these are the guys that I feel like Seattle could still realistically target. I don't think any of these guys are going to command top dollar. And so let's say Seattle does have, somewhere in the range of $20 to $30 million in cap space. That doesn't seem like a lot. But again, there are ways to manipulate, contracts, void years, restructuring contracts and whatnot. And so, it might not seem like a lot, but I think it's definitely enough to bring in any one of these guys. Ideally, I'd like for Seattle to bring in at least 2 of these 4. And if it's not 2 of these 4, then at least 2. So we have wide receiver and offensive line here, at least 1 receiver and then 1 offensive lineman. Just 1 more of both. And I think as far as free agency, Seattle's pretty much set. I'm really just looking forward to the draft now because I don't think there's a big splashy move left to be made. Any final thoughts, last second, whatever you want to say about free agency?
I'd say my list is, like I said, similar to yours. I think the only name I would add here is also been mentioned by a couple people in the chat. LSL Hazard and the official merge, Mekhi Becton. That's another one of those few names left on that offensive line list that, you know, would be cool to see. We know how good that Eagles offensive line was. If we get a little taste of that, it'd be great to have one offensive line free agent signing that we could just make kind of like, okay, there's one guy you can count on to anchor things, and let's just see what the draft yields. So that's probably the one name I'd add to it. The Cooper Kupp thing is obviously intriguing because, you know, we all want the MVP version of Cooper Kupp. He's past that time now, but I kind of like Lockett, right? I know he can still play. Yeah, the injury thing is a little bit of a concern, but you like to think, again, this is that sort of wishful thinking that I had before the Seahawks traded DK and Geno. Oh, I'm sure he'd love to be here, right? I'm sure Cooper Kupp would love to be here. He's got family here or whatever. But I don't know how much that really weighs in, or do these guys just look at it all business like, well, I can fly wherever I want to. I don't need to live in Washington. But maybe he would. Maybe he'd be like, I'd love to go live back in Washington and be in the city, in the town where the state that I, as a kid, probably maybe rooted for when he was, you know, growing up in Yakima and then went over to Eastern Washington. I mean, he lived most of his career here. So it feels like there'd be an appeal there to where it's not just about money, but kind of like, that'd be fun. And I could stick it to the Rams every couple times a year. So the Cooper Kupp thing would be very, very fun. And plus my business partner, Mike, his best friend growing up was a Kupp. Yeah, Kyle Kupp was his friend in high school, and they were related to the Kupps. So he kind of personally knows them. So that'd be kind of cool that that connection. But yeah, it'd be great if I would not be sad if that was, you know, depending on the price. I would not be upset if that signing went through. So yeah, otherwise I think that's a pretty good list. If we can get any of those guys in here. But yeah, Mekhi Becton, that would be pretty nice just to have one guy from the offensive line come over.
Right. And last thought here, before I give you the floor, Norb, with the Cooper Kupp, he might not have too much gas left in the tank. But like I had mentioned sometime earlier in the show, I would hate to have a receiver room full of first and second year guys. Like, there has to be at least one veteran in that room. And so, you know, Cooper Kupp can be that guy. Yes, he's probably past his prime, but to be, you know, the veteran he had. And again, if we're talking about bringing in guys who have familiarity, Cooper Kupp does have ties to Seattle's new passing game coordinator. I think his name is Jake Peetz, and he was with the Rams back in 2022. And so if Seattle is only looking to bring in free agents who have ties to what they have internally, Cooper Kupp makes all the sense in the world. He's also a veteran, because you don't want to just draft a bunch of rookies and have to rely on a bunch of rookies and then JSN and Bobo. And it's like, oh, there's no veteran whatsoever in the room. And so I know they also both excel in the slots, but both can also do some damage on the outside, right? They're not just both limited to the slot. I think JSN, you can kind of open up, you know, his game a little bit more, maybe put him on the outside because Cooper Kupp is older and slower. Then you probably, you know, play him more in the slot. But, you know, people are saying, oh, you don't need two slot receivers. They're both versatile enough to be able to play on the inside and on the outside. So those are my last thoughts. Norb, I want to give you the floor. But before I do, I just want to say, you know, thank you again for taking the time out of your busy day. This was a last-minute show. To all the people out there in the chat that I didn't have a chance to talk to, I apologize, but I have to get to work soon, so I do have to wrap things up. But Norb, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay. I just want to shout out one of the comments. Filipino Mad, the last comment in the chat, said MVS, who we talked about, is a veteran and a two-time Super Bowl champ. So, yes, he does bring that as well. So we do at least have one veteran in the wide receiving room to kind of talk to the youngsters, whoever that might be, that we draft here. But, yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show, man. It was an unexpected pleasure to get your text to say, hey, man, you want to jump on? Because I was already, ready to talk Seahawks anyway after today's events. So, yeah, it's always fun to collab with you, man. And we always have a good time. And as I predicted, you said, oh, yeah, we might go for an hour. I said, hey, man, we always go half hour past what we say we're going to do. And sure enough, it's it's a half hour past what we would do, and I don't mind it because it's always a lot of fun. So I appreciate you bringing me on. Thanks, guys, for listening to me rant on about the Seahawks. And yes, if you would like to check out my content as well, you can find me at NorbCam on all socials, YouTube, and all the other socials as well. So I'm sure I'll be posted quite often anytime there's an interesting news break, and of course leading up to the draft. It's a lot of fun. This is a blast. As stressful and crazy it is, it's good entertainment. So we'll try to make it as entertaining for you guys as well. So that's it. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a blast.
Man, as always, Norb, I hope you have a blessed rest of your night. We will talk soon because, like I said, I do plan on going live more regularly than I have been. Maybe it's not the next show, but I know we're definitely going to work together soon. If you ever need somebody, you need a last minute guest, or you need someone to, kind of hop on. I mean, my line is always open. So
I'm gonna have to try to get you and try to get good old DJ Squavo. Noah too. He's been. I've kind of reconnected with him a little bit. He's been busy doing his career thing with the news and all that, but I think he's kind of opened up to doing a little bit more, getting back on the sports thing on some of the social media stuff. So I might be able to pull him in on some things. It'd be a fun reunion to have you and Noah back again, where it all started years ago, back before COVID, even when you guys were still at Green River. Man, those were some fun early years of collaborating together.
Man, I miss those days. Norb, it's actually crazy because if he didn't have to go to bed at 6:45 p.m., he would have been on tonight's show.
Oh, had you connected with him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, what? Yeah, we still keep in touch.
Okay, very cool.
I had texted him and I was like, bro, I'd love to have you on. And he's like, oh, I'm in bed by 6:45. And I'm like, oh, damn it. I'm planning on going live on 7.
6:45. He's keeping those senior citizen hours, man. But I know the guy gets up early and works early, so yeah, I get it.
Right. But I know that a reunion is in the cards eventually, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll be working on it. I'll be on the horn with you to make that happen. But for now, I'm glad we got to do this. This was a lot of fun.
It's a blast, as always. Norb, brother, have a blessed night, and everybody hit that subscribe, man, please.
All right. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks, baby. Peace. All right, y'all. Like I said, and shout out to Norb, man. Again, I can't stress this enough for hopping on here last minute. I love him, man. I love him. I know you guys do too. So one more time, I'm gonna put this up here before I wrap it up. At NorbCam on YouTube, on Instagram, on X. Please show him some love. All the love you guys show me, show him that same love. If you're unable to watch this live and you're catching the replay, same thing, please. At NorbCam, everywhere. He is the reigning 12th man of the year, one of the OG voices of the Seahawks. I can't talk about him enough. I mean, we used to be on this show before we even had our own YouTube channels, for crying out loud. I know all the OG fans in here remember because I hear about it all the time. And so I'm looking forward to working with him soon. And if you guys aren't already, man, hit that notification bell. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll be back soon. If things happen in the Seahawk world, who knows? I might even go live again tomorrow. We'll see. Or maybe this weekend. So just hit that notification bell so you don't ever miss a live show or an upload. Things happen fast in this world. And so I can't guarantee when I'm going to go live next, but I do know I'm going to go live soon. But to everybody that's tuned in, to everybody in the chat that took time out of their day to tune in, man, I got love for each and every single one of you guys. Send me a DM on Instagram. If you want to chop it up, talk Hawks, follow me on Instagram at Steezy A Media, Steezy A Smith Media. Nothing but love, you guys. Peace and blessings. As I like to say, man, Steezy out, baby. Oh, okay. That was supposed to be a little bit more smooth. All right. Steezy out, you guys. Peace. Again, this video is going to be dedicated to Mr. Todd Nas. While that concludes this video, we have loads of other content. You don't have to stop watching there. Other content on our channel homepage, as well as our social media platforms. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for us. Tell a friend and tell a friend. Nothing but love, and Steezy out.